most of a very long life. We are told, he tells us, that he is 80 and upward. 80. And he gives away his power and his crown, but he still wants the glory and the reverence due to a king, not realizing that you get the reverence because you have the power. So, in addition to that mistake, the play begins with King Lear making a number of mistakes. He asks his children, "Which of you, shall we say, doth love us most?" Which is, to say the least, a rather odd question to ask children. I think any reasonable children would not want to be asked that question. I asked Emily's children, 9-year-old and 5-year-old, how they would like that question. Mm-hmm. And do you want to share what they said?
That's not fair, Mommy. Not a fair question.
So Lear asks the question, and the daughter who in fact loves him most chooses not to play his games. And he banishes her. And he retains the two daughters who are not liking him. I don't think they hate him at the beginning of the play. They don't much like him, partly because of how he has raised them. And he puts himself at their mercy. And so, as is the case with most people who have enjoyed immense wealth and absolute power for most of a long life, he tends to see other people insofar as they satisfy his needs and desires. They're not quite human, they're not quite of the same species as himself. So largely as a result of his folly, and largely as a result of his adult daughter's growing cruelty, he finds himself homeless in a terrible storm. And in a paroxysm of physical and, even more important, mental and moral anguish, in this terrible night of hell in the storm, he comes to the painful and difficult realization that other people are just that, other people, and they are also suffering. And for the first time in his long life, he reaches out in his mind to others and recognizes that they are fellow sufferers, and he utters a prayer, the like of which he has most likely never uttered before. And in the midst of the storm, he prays, "Poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness defend you from seasons such as these? Oh, I have ta'en too little care of this. Take physic, pomp, expose thyself to feel what wretches feel, that thou mayst shake the superflux to them, and show the heavens more just." So now Emily Mattina, who is the artistic director of Shakespearean's productions and the director of this production of King Lear, will talk about Shakespeareans and about the production.
So Shakespearean's is located right here in Waterbury, Connecticut, and from this location we reach about 55,000 students a year throughout the state and neighboring states with programming right at their schools. In addition to that, we teach acting classes in our studio. We do studio performances, frequently touching an issue perhaps in the community, such as we did a production of Radium Girls, which is being brought back this summer, which you may know is a relevant story in this area. And we also tour the vineyards in Connecticut with pieces from our repertory. And for the past 10 years, this is year number 10, we have brought a free Shakespeare in Library Park to downtown Waterbury. It's been our gift to the community and a labor of love. I conceived of these talks as a way to bring the issues in the play out for discussion. I happen to feel a real kinship with this play and the issues going on in it. David often likens this play, as many people do, to the great works of Beethoven, the Sistine Chapel. It is one of man's greatest creations, we both believe. And it has many ideas and thoughts and issues in it that, to me, are things that are very important that we talk about right now before it's too late. So I think they're things that are important for us in Connecticut, 2014, right here in Waterbury, and around the whole entire state. So we have been doing the Library Park for the past 10 years, and unfortunately, this will be the last year of Library Park unless we are able to raise the funds needed to make it financially feasible. And so we're really positive attitude at Shakespeareans, and we're pushing very hard to raise that $28,000 that we needed to raise. We're about a third half of the way there. But I wanted to do these talks as a way to reach out to the community and beyond, to bring people together to see the play and to look at the play, which shows the human condition more thoroughly, I believe, than any other play written in the English language. And I believe that by coming together as a community, by discussing these issues, we increase our own sense of empathy and self-worth. And so David and I have been doing these talks up here and also down in the Brantford, Guilford area. And what we like to do is talk about the issues in the play, talk about the play itself, the plot. We have some audience involvement where we love to bring people up to perform in some scenes right along with Dr. Richmond, David Richmond himself. And I also love, near and dear to my heart as a director, are the ideas that surround the play and how we manifest those ideas in production. So I'll be talking a little bit about the sets and costumes and props and how we are bringing this play alive with the Shakespearean approach. Before we launch into our first topic, or talk about the plot, I just wanted to let everybody know David Richmond is a professor at the University of New Hampshire. He's a published author, he's a director, he's an actor. He was my professor 20-something years ago. And he is a guest artist with us this summer. He's been with us since the end of May. And it is truly an experience of a lifetime to have him here, and every moment is treasured and
well, for both of us, it's a mutual experience of a lifetime.
We like to start out with the parallel plots in King Lear. Those of you who may have read it know that it's a typical Shakespearean play and that there's a lot going on. And there's dual plots, mirrored plots I like to call them, because I like using mirrors on stage. And what's particularly interesting about these two plots is that they're identical. And I sat there when I started working on the play last summer going, why did this man do this? We get it, we get the story, we can follow the story. Why are there these two plots going on simultaneously that are identical? And David, would you like to talk a little bit about that, please?
And I will take up on that. Shakespeare's telling us the same story twice. In each case, you have a cantankerous and self-willed old man who is sending away the child, and in one case even condemning to death the child that loves him most, and putting himself at the mercy of the child or children who love him least. You have Lear with his three daughters, and you have the parallel character, maybe call him the mirror character, his name is Gloucester, with the two sons. I would say there are two, maybe three reasons why Shakespeare is telling us the same story twice. Obviously, he wants to make sure that we get it. And when any great writer who wants to make sure that a point is gotten will repeat and reiterate the point. We see that in refrains, in poetry, or in music. And Shakespeare is going to reiterate a number of things in his plays. Second, so to make sure that we understand the story. Also, to make sure that we understand that the dysfunction, the hatred, and the love in Lear's family do not constitute a special case. Most families, unhappily, almost all families, are going to display the depth of cruelty and the height of generosity and love that these two families that we are meant to look at are displaying. And I think a third point, and a point that is particularly timely, both timely and timeless. Shakespeare's plays are for all time and they are very much of our time. For Shakespeare, the supreme virtue, he did not use the word empathy. The word hadn't been coined during Shakespeare's time. Empathy doesn't come into the English language until about the beginning of the 20th century, around 1908, 1910. He did use a term, fellow feeling. And for Shakespeare, the supreme virtue, the characters whom his plays ask us to care about most, are those characters who either have or learn fellow feeling, learn to put themselves into the minds and emotions of other sufferers. One of Shakespeare's most admired characters, the heroine Miranda in The Tempest, says, "Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer." And one of the most generous characters in King Lear, Gloucester's son Edgar, describes himself as a man made tame by fortune's blows, who by the art of known and feeling sorrows am pregnant to good pity. Lear learns, as we heard at the beginning of this session, to have fellow feeling for fellow sufferers in the storm. And Gloucester learns a similar lesson during the midst of his terrible, painful travails, when he says, let the superfluous, he uses the same word. Lear said superflux, Gloucester says superfluous. Let the superfluous and lust-dieted man who will not see because he does not feel. We have to learn to feel in order truly to learn to see. So in King Lear, the most important divide among the characters is the divide between the loving and the generous and the cold, cruel, and selfish. And that divide between generosity and selfishness will always be with us. And we had fun asking again Emily's children how they would like it if, when they grew up, if Mommy and Daddy came to live with them with 100 friends.
Our children we're very close to our children, but Thomas was horrified. He said, "Mommy, you and Daddy and 100 friends? No." So
this is Lear. There's something to be said for Lear's daughters who don't really want this cantankerous old man and 100 knights descending on their, even though Lear's given them half the kingdom, they don't want the old man and his 100 knights.
fair enough. One thing we've enjoyed exploring over the past few weeks, and again, this comes naturally when you're an actor, when you're working in theater, is understanding a character and developing a character. You need to have empathy. You need to find out where they're coming from. And we've been particularly interested in exploring the fact that so many of the characters in Lear have gotten a bad rap because they've been, designated as the two nasty, mean older sisters. Whereas Goneril and Regan have some cause for some things that
May
they
I share
do.
my favorite critical remarks about these two women?
Of course.
Male critics, of course. And so one male critic describes these two women as lust-crazed beasts. And another male critic says of Regan, and this is actually one of the great critics, this is A.C. Bradley, says of Lear's daughter Regan, "She is the most hideous human being, if she is one, that Shakespeare ever invented."
And we've been enjoying challenging that and finding very three-dimensional and interesting, ways to create these characters, to bring these characters alive. Sitting over here actually is the actress playing Regan, and she's been really bringing an enormous amount. I know, you should say it now. This is Samantha. Interestingly enough, another former student of David's, really bringing the alumni together.
Lear is a family play,
Yes.
and for me, this is just working with so many former students is another part of this very great gift.
So we're going to look at the first scene after Lear is starting his carrying out his plan to live with his eldest daughter first, live with Goneril. And the last thing he heard her say, of course, was, "I love you more than anything in the world. You're the best father. I wouldn't want to even exist if it weren't for you," in the kindest, sweetest tones possible. Then Dad and his 100 knights proceed to cause a lot of trouble, according to her. And she's not so happy anymore. We do need a volunteer to play Goneril. If someone wants to come up and do a little bit of acting. Anybody? Goneril? Anyone? Great.
I'll try it.
Okay.
Oh, not very good at this.
Then you can do Cordelia,
Yes,
maybe. So I'll give you a couple minutes to just look this over. So this is very early in the play. We're still in the first act, and Cordelia has been sent off, and she marries the King of France. So she is now the Queen of France, and she's gone to live in France. And Lear is planning to spend 1 month with Goneril and then move to Regan's house. And things start to move pretty quickly after the scene with Goneril, and he ends up going to Regan's a little bit sooner than originally planned. David, I think.
And Regan doesn't want him.
No. So here's the throne, and I'll see if you want to
Oh, I
come
have
over
to
here.
actually get up?
Yes, so the way I've staged this in the play is there's other action going on in front of the throne. On that dais over there is a throne that Lear starts off in and the daughters take over. And that's what this is representing now. And Lear goes to sit on it, and Goneril says, no, it's my throne now. And so you go ahead and sit on your throne. And whenever you're ready to.
And the only other note I wanted to make sure we all understand is Lear has not only never been talked to by anyone in the way that Goneril is about to speak to him. He's never been crossed. He has never been reprimanded. He has simply never heard that tone of voice, especially from a daughter. And I think that goes a great way to explaining his reaction. And so he wants to speak to his daughter. She won't speak with him. He keeps asking for her. She won't come. And finally, when she does come, he turns to her and he says, "How now, daughter? You are too much of late in the frown."
Not only, sir, this your all licensed fool, but other of your insolent retinue do hourly carp and quarrel, breaking forth in rank and not to be endured riots. Sir, I had thought by making this well known unto you to have found a safe redress, but now grow fearful by what yourself too late have spoken done, that you protect this course and put it on by your allowance.
Are you our daughter? Does any here know me? This is not Lear. Does Lear walk thus, speak thus? Where are his eyes? Who is it that can tell me who I am?
Lear's shadow.
Your name, fair gentlewoman.
This admonition, sir, is much of the savor of other of your new pranks. As you are old and reverend, you should be wise. How do you keep 100 knights and squires, men so disordered, so debauched and bold, that this our court, infected with their manners, make it more like a tavern or a brothel than a graced palace?
Darkness and devils. Saddle my horses, call my train together, yet have I left a daughter.
You strike my people, and your disordered rabble makes servants of their betters.
Ingratitude, thou marble-hearted fiend, more hideous when thou show'st thee the child than the sea monster.
Very nice, Althea.
Yeah,
Don't you go calling.
that was terrific. I think we found a Goneril.
Yes, I know. If something
Yeah.
happens to our Goneril, Althea, we're going to call on you.
Yeah.
I can't remember my name half the time. You want me to remember 100,000 lines?
We are going to be continuing on, of course, with our planned talk. But at this point, are there any questions? Anybody have?
Where exactly are we in Act 1? I'm sorry.
As 1-4?
1/4. Right, that's enough.
Yeah, that, the scene is Act 1, Scene 4. It's the first
Okay.
scene with Goneril. I want to make a comment here before we go to questions. This is the elephant in the room comment. Lear is morally blind. I was actually rather hoping, Mary Jane and Fran, that you had read Oedipus in your Greek theater course, because the obvious comparison to Lear is to Oedipus, who, of course, Oedipus failed to see that which he ought to have seen, and did see that which he ought not to have seen. Same thing is true of Lear. And the hope is, Emily's and my hope, we know that it's a great risk. Playing Lear anyway is a great risk, no question. Lear has been described as becoming a favorite image of ours by another great director, one of the 20th century's great productions of King Lear, described the play as an unscalable mountain littered with the corpses of all of the actors and directors who've ever attempted it. So Emily's and my corpses will soon be there, and we'll be in good company. But the hope is that my physical blindness will help us to tell the story of Lear's moral blindness even more powerfully and more sharply. Because what Lear and other characters in the play learn, I mean, some of the characters already know it. Some of the characters never do learn it, but Lear does learn it, Gloucester learns it, is that in order truly to see, one must also feel. In fact, we're going to hear in, I think, a scene we're going to be doing in a few minutes, Lear coming to that realization of see and feel as well. So it is, I happen to be aware that I am physically blind. I think Emily is also aware that I am physically blind, and we're using that in, or attempting to use that fact in this production. I have decided that Lear's sight is failing, but he won't admit it. If the play were being staged in the 21st century, he'd still be driving. And he doesn't allow anyone to call him on his failing sight. He gets very angry when people do, and one of the things that I am proudest of, actually Sam's playing Regan and I have been having a lot of fun with this, and Nina, who's playing Goneril, they're doing terrible things about Lear's blindness, and having a great deal of fun with it.
It adds a whole fascinating layer. I first did a read-through of the adaptation that I created. I don't change language or anything like that, but I work from several different texts and decide which pieces I'm going to keep and which pieces I'm not going to keep. And I did our first read-through last year with last year's cast of Much Ado. And they knew at that point that a blind man was going to play this role. And the number of references to sight and blindness eyes is just phenomenal. It's just absolutely amazing. And the level that we get to with the fact that this man is physically blind is really quite fascinating. And I guess then again it goes back to the double plot with Gloucester becoming blind during the play, and only when he is blinded does he see he's made an incredibly stupid mistake by believing the wrong son.
I stumbled when I saw, he says.
Take a look at that. This is the model of the set. There's 3 giant walls. For once in my life, I am actually setting the play when Shakespeare intended it, which is about 900 BC. So it's roughly the time of Solomon. So it's sort of a biblical setting. And these are 3 giant walls, and these areas here, the circle and the square, are actually scrim. And so when we shine light from one direction, we get a mirror effect, and we shine light from another direction, we get silhouette behind here. So this serves a number of different purposes. I like using doppelgangers a lot, miniature versions, child versions of grown-up characters on stage. We'll talk more about this in a little bit, a little later on, or children, why they're important to Shakespeareans. But there are 3 little versions of the 3 daughters, and I frequently use that visual as a mirror. I can tell stories, go back in time, and visually it's very exciting and pleasing to me. And then the costumes, and maybe you actually want to take that stack over there and start to pass them around while we continue to talk. The costumes and many of the props are set through a fairy tale lens. As you can probably hear just from the brief talk about the play, there seems to be a fairy, 3 daughters, the king giving over his kingdom. What could possibly go wrong? And there's a number of other fairy tales referenced throughout the play, which is really, really interesting. Also some King Arthur references. So to me, it's really interesting. Why did Shakespeare choose to take these fairy tales, take these stories that are embedded in our culture, and weave them throughout the play. And I chose to use that as a design concept. So our costume designer, who actually I was in college with at the University of New Hampshire, was one of David's students years ago. She's a professor down at Fairfield University. She and I talked about the costumes as being a Renaissance interpretation of 900 BC. So if somebody in the Renaissance was doing this play and they said, geez, we're going to do kind of our clothing, but we're going to set it 900 BC in a fairy tale world, that's what I was going for there. In addition, you may have seen, some of you have seen the poster and commented on the poster. Everybody likes the birdcage idea. That also comes from the text, an image that is in the text towards the end of the play. David, will you give me the line, please?
Lear and his daughter, whom he's banished, are reconciled, and he says to her, when they are about to be imprisoned, he says, come, let's away to prison. We two alone will sing like birds in the cage.
And so I liked the idea of a bird cage. The bird cage, through mirrors and tricks and light, is how we show the prison at the end. And also there's an actual three-dimensional bird cage throughout the play. We'll officially wrap up. Thank you so much. This has been, I think, the best discussion we've had.